What if the tuna in your pantry isn't really giving you the clean protein you think it is? What if the cheaper it looks, the more expensive it could become for your health later? Before we open this list, hit like, subscribe, and share this with the person in your life who buys tuna without reading the fine print, because after today, you'll never look at that shelf the same way again. Most people think canned tuna is simple. Fish, water, maybe salt, done. But that clean image is exactly why this category gets away with so much. Tuna is supposed to be one of the easiest proteins to buy. It is cheap, fast, high in protein, and sold like a smart choice. That is the story. The truth is messier. Some cans are padded with extra liquid, so you feel like you bought more meat than you really did. Some use oils, broth, or additives to hide poor texture and weak flavor. Some sit in a category of fish that can carry more mercury than most shoppers realize. And some are wrapped in wholesome language like sustainable, premium, or dolphin safe, while the actual sourcing behind that label has been questioned again and again. So when I say fake in this video, I do not just mean counterfeit. I mean a product that sells you one story and delivers another, a can that looks like value but drains into disappointment, a brand that talks clean but buries details you should know, a tuna product that may be legal to sell but still not smart to eat often. And this matters more than people think, because tuna is not a once-a-year food for many families. It is lunch, it is post-workout food, it is the backup dinner in the pantry, it is what busy parents grab when they want something quick. It is what students buy when money is tight. Which means if a brand cuts corners, it does not just fool you once, it becomes part of your routine. That is why this list is not about snobbery. I'm not here to tell you every can needs to cost $10 and come from a tiny boat with a handwritten label. I'm here to separate the cans that look honest from the ones that rely on confusion, weak standards, and marketing tricks. And by the end, I will also give you 8 options that are much easier to feel good about. Let's start with number 13, because this is where a lot of people first learn how the game works. Starkest chunk light tuna in water has long carried a reputation problem. The biggest issue is not just taste, it is the feeling that the can gives you less tuna than you expected. One reason people point to is the use of vegetable broth, which helps the fish hold more liquid and look fuller in the can. That sounds harmless until you drain it and realize how little is left behind. Over the years, the brand has also faced legal scrutiny tied to product claims and pricing behavior. And once a brand gets known for giving shoppers less than they think they bought, trust becomes hard to rebuild. When tuna starts acting like a sponge, that is not value. That is a warning. Number 12 is chicken of the sea, chunk light tuna in water. This is another big name. And big names are often the easiest to trust. But that trust is exactly what makes disappointment sting more. Like the previous brand, critics have raised concerns about excess liquid and broth-heavy packing. But there's another issue people miss. Some products in this space lean on soy-based ingredients or flavor support that makes the fish seem more substantial than it really is. For people with soy sensitivity or allergies, that matters. Even for everyone else, it raises a simple question. If the tuna is good, why does it need help pretending to be better? Good tuna should not need a costume. Number 11 is great value solid white albacore. Now we move into the part of the shelf that looks smart because it looks cheap. This is where a lot of shoppers think they found the hack. Albacore is firmer, milder, and more satisfying than chunk light for many people, but it also tends to come with a bigger mercury question. That is the trade-off nobody puts in bold letters on the front. Budget albacore is especially tricky because people often eat more of it once they discover they like the texture. The problem is that the more often you make it your default, the more those mercury numbers start to matter. And if a brand is not leading with testing transparency, you're making a guess every time you open the can. Cheap tuna is one thing, cheap uncertainty is another. Number 10 is Kirkland's signature solid white albacore. This one surprises people because Costco does a lot of things well, and shoppers tend to give the house brand the benefit of the doubt. But tuna is one of those areas where scale can turn into distance. The farther you get from the actual catch, the easier it becomes for shoppers to lose sight of how the fish was sourced, handled, and processed. The criticism around Kirkland's tuna has not mainly been about convenience or price. It has been about bigger questions tied to fishing practices, supplier behavior, and whether public-facing claims match what happens upstream. Additives used to preserve color can also make a product look fresher than it feels on the fork. And that matters because canned tuna is already a product built on trust. You cannot see the fish before it was packed. You cannot smell the boat. All you have is the label. So if the label starts doing too much work, step back. Number 9 is Target's Good and Gather tuna. This is the kind of brand that wins people with tone. Clean design, gentle colors, the quiet promise that this is the nicer version of grocery store food. And that is exactly why sustainability language hits harder here. When a can suggests it was caught responsibly, Most people do not investigate. They reward the label, but that label only means something if the sourcing chain can stand up to scrutiny. Critics and lawsuits aimed at sustainability claims are not tiny details. They cut to the core of the brand message. If you charge extra for ethics, you better have the evidence. Otherwise, you're not selling better tuna. You are selling emotional comfort. Number 8 is Whole Foods albacore and extra virgin olive oil. This one is interesting because the issue is less about scary additives and more about the gap between promise and experience. Whole Foods has strong credibility with shoppers who care about cleaner food and better sourcing. So when the tuna disappoints, it feels personal. Many people expect rich flavor, clean texture, and something close to premium quality. Instead, some buyers describe a can where the oil takes over, the fish tastes flat, and the texture still feels oddly dry. That is the frustrating part. You paid more. You thought you upgraded. But better values on paper do not always become better eating. If a tuna can cost more and still leaves you reaching for mayo just to make it enjoyable, something went wrong. Number 7 is Kroger Solid White Albacore. Kroger is not usually where people go for romance, they go for routine. And routine is powerful. If you buy the same tuna every week, you stop examining it. You just toss it in the cart. That is how middling products survive for years. Concerns around traceability and sourcing have shadowed big grocery brands for a while, and Kroger has not escaped that conversation. But even setting that aside, there is the simpler issue of eating experience. A lot of private label albacore lives in a strange space where it is not moist enough to enjoy plain, not flavorful enough to justify the salt, and not cheap enough to excuse the disappointment. If a tuna can only work after you bury it under dressing, celery, onion, pickles, and bread, are you buying tuna or just filler for other ingredients? Number 6 is Food Lion Chunk Light Tuna. This is another example of the shelf's oldest trick. Stretch the liquid, stretch the volume, stretch the illusion. Shoppers open the can, see it full, and assume full means solid. But full of what? Once broth and water enter the chat, the real question becomes how much fish you're actually paying for. And in lower cost products, that ratio can become the whole story. Add weak transparency around sourcing or mercury testing, and you are left with the kind of purchase that feels fine, only because no one slowed down to question it. Budget food does not have to be deceptive. But when a brand seems to rely on you never checking, that is not a good sign. Number 5 is Genova yellowfin in olive oil. This is where things get more complicated because Genova actually has fans. Some people genuinely like the taste. It feels more grown up, a little more refined, the kind of can you might use in pasta or a salad and feel proud of. But taste alone cannot carry a product through a recall problem. Recent recall concerns tied to defective pull tab seals put a heavy cloud over several tuna products connected to the same manufacturing network. And the reason that matters is simple. When packaging integrity fails in canned food, the conversation changes immediately from flavor to safety. A can is not just a container. It is the barrier between you and a potentially dangerous situation. Once that trust cracks, everything else becomes secondary. Quick pause, because if this breakdown is helping you shop smarter, press like, subscribe, and send this video to your family group chat with one line. Check your tuna before your tuna checks you. That way one small click might save somebody a lot of bad lunches. Number 4 is Bumblebee Chunk Light Tuna. This brand has been around forever, and for some people that history still feels reassuring, but history can comfort you long after it should. Bumblebee has spent years in headlines for the wrong reasons, from price-fixing cases to sourcing controversies and labor allegations tied to parts of the industry. And when a brand keeps appearing in stories about conduct instead of quality, shoppers should notice. Then there is the can itself. A lot of people describe chunk light products from this tier as mushy, metallic, or strangely dry all at once. That combination is hard to ignore. It tells you the brand may be selling more habit than excellence. Familiar is not the same thing as reliable. Number 3 is Meyer Chunk Light Tuna in vegetable oil. On the surface, this one seems harmless. It can even taste better than some of the watery cans because oil smooths out the texture and calms the harsher notes. That is exactly why it fools people. Oil can make average fish feel richer than it is, but soybean oil brings its own baggage. Some shoppers avoid it for allergy reasons. Others avoid it because they do not want a cheap, heavily used oil overshadowing the food they actually bought. And there is a bigger nutritional irony here. Tuna gets praised for omega-3s, but if the can is packed in an oil you were never looking for, the clean health halo starts to fade. When the carrier around the fish becomes the main flavor, you're not buying the fish anymore, you are buying camouflage. Number 2 is Geisha seasoned tuna products, especially the heavily flavored ones. This is where manufacturers lean hard on sauce to rescue weak fish. Chipotle, spices, bold seasoning, strong salt. There's nothing wrong with flavor. The problem is when flavor becomes the distraction. Seasoning can mask muddy notes, rough texture, or darker meat that premium brands would trim away. And once sodium climbs high, the can moves even farther from the healthy image tuna usually enjoys. People buy tuna expecting a clean protein. If the ingredient list starts looking like a snack food and the salt punches you in the face, that simple promise is gone. And number one, the can I would think twice about first, is Trader Joe's solid white albacore. This one shocks people because Trader Joe's has a loyal following and earns it in plenty of categories. But even strong brands have weak spots, and this appears to be one of them. Among recent consumer discussions around Mercury testing, Trader Joe's albacore has been singled out as one of the worst performers. That alone is enough to stop me. Then you add the frequent complaints about dryness, excessive salt, and sourcing concerns, and the whole thing starts to feel like a product living on brand trust instead of actual performance. This is the can that proves a beautiful store, and clever packaging do not protect you from a bad buy. Now, before we move into the better options, let's make one thing clear. A bad tuna product is rarely just one bad thing. It is usually a stack of smaller disappointments: too much liquid, too little fish, too much salt, too little transparency, a nice label covering average quality, or a product that might taste okay, but asks you to ignore a serious risk. That is how the canned tuna aisle gets people. Not with one giant lie, but with 10 little ones. So what does a better can actually look like? Usually it starts with a shorter ingredient list. Tuna, maybe salt, maybe olive oil if that is what you want. It often comes from brands that talk openly about catch method, location, or testing. The texture tends to be more defined, not shredded into paste. The liquid, if there is any, feels like part of the fish, not a trick to fill space. And the brand does not seem scared of letting the tuna taste like tuna. That brings us to the 8 safer options. These are not perfect foods, and no canned product deserves blind trust. But compared with the brands we just covered, these are the ones that make a stronger case for being worth your money and much easier to fit into a sane routine. At number 8 is Safe Catch Elite. This brand built its reputation around one word that should matter far more in tuna than it usually does: testing. Safe Catch became popular because it centered mercury screening instead of treating it like a footnote. That alone makes it stand out in a market where many shoppers are left to assume everything is fine. The brand also avoids the common trick of drowning the can in broth. When you open it, the liquid is usually the fish's own juices and oils, which means more of what you paid for is actually fish. The texture can be firmer than some people expect, but that is often the price of a product that is trying to stay honest instead of pretty. If you want the safety-focused choice, this is one of the clearest picks. Number 7 is Wild Planet Albacore. Wild Planet has earned a loyal audience because it works well for people who want a middle ground between mainstream and premium. It has stronger sourcing language than many major brands, and its style of packing helps preserve the natural oils in the fish. That matters because drained-to-death tuna is one of the biggest reasons people think they dislike canned tuna. When the fish keeps more of its natural moisture, you need less rescue from mayo, lemon, or mustard. It also tends to feel more like real food and less like emergency protein. Number 6 is American Tuna. This is the brand for people who want traceability and do not mind paying for it. American Tuna leans hard into small-scale values, domestic processing, and a simpler ingredient approach. And what I like most is the confidence. Brands that believe in their fish tend to do less to it. Less filler, less pretending, less need to distract you. Open a can from a company like this, and you can usually tell right away whether the fish was packed with pride or packed to hit a margin target. The downside is obvious: it is expensive. But if you only eat tuna occasionally and want one can that feels much more intentional, this is the kind of product that can reset your expectations. Number 5 is Fishwife Smoked Albacore and its other tuna offerings. Fishwife did something smart. Instead of trying to pretend tuna is boring health food, it treated tinned fish like something exciting. That shift matters because when a brand wants the fish to be the main character, it pays closer attention to flavor and texture. Fishwife is premium, yes, sometimes very premium. But it also proves that people will pay more when the product actually feels special. The smoked albacore in particular gives you depth, richness, and personality without the sense that it is hiding bad fish underneath. It is not the cheapest pantry option. It is the can you buy when you want to remember tuna can still feel like food, not just fuel. Number 4 is Tonino Ventresca. If you have never tried Ventresca, think of it as the belly cut people remember. Richer, softer, more luxurious. This is not everyday desk lunch tuna for most people. It is more like the can that ruins lower quality tuna for you afterward. What makes it stand out is not just taste. It is transparency of experience. You can often see what you are getting, especially in glass packaging. The fish looks like real pieces, not mystery fragments pressed into a shape. When the product looks confident enough to be seen, that tells you a lot. Number 3 is Scout. What I respect about Scout is that it understands modern eating habits. People do not only want a can in the pantry, they want something portable, clean, and easy to turn into a quick meal or snack. Scout's tuna products lean into that without drowning everything in junk ingredients. The fish tends to feel deliberate, the seasoning feels thought through, and the brand keeps its ethical and environmental identity front and center. That is not enough by itself, but when it matches a good eating experience, it matters. This is one of those brands that makes tuna feel current again instead of stuck in a 1990s pantry. Here's your second reminder. If you've ever stood in the grocery aisle comparing cans like you're decoding a secret message, subscribe now, drop a like, and share this video with a caption that says, "We are never buying random tuna again. Future, you will be grateful." Number 2 is Pole and Line. The name tells you the entire philosophy. Simpler method, cleaner idea, less collateral damage. Brands like this win trust because the catch method is not a side note buried on the back. It is the identity. And when that cleaner approach is paired with tuna that actually tastes moist, mild, and versatile, you get the kind of pantry staple people keep coming back to. This is the can that works plain, in a tuna melt, in pasta, on crackers, or in a salad without begging for rescue. Good tuna should make cooking easier, not force you into hiding it. And number 1 is Ortiz Bonito del Norte. This is the can that changes the conversation. A lot of people think tuna is only good when mixed with something else. Ortiz is the counter-argument in a tin. The fish is carefully packed, the olive oil is high quality, and the experience feels intentional from the moment you open it. It tastes like a product made by people who expect you to eat it slowly, not mash it with mayonnaise and forget it exists. Yes, it costs more, a lot more than the average grocery can. But it also answers a question the cheap brands never can. What does tuna taste like when nobody is trying to cut corners? Once you know the answer, the bargain shelf becomes much less convincing. Now let's zoom out, because the real lesson is bigger than brands. The tuna aisle teaches the same lesson as every other processed food category. Legal does not mean ideal. Popular does not mean clean. Cheap does not mean smart. And premium does not always mean worth it. The only way to shop well is to understand the trade-offs hiding behind the labels. Take Mercury. This is the issue most shoppers vaguely know about. Mercury does not magically appear in the can. It builds through the ocean food chain. Small organisms absorb it. Small fish eat those organisms. Larger fish eat those fish. Tuna, especially larger species like albacore, sit higher in that chain. Over time, mercury concentrates in their bodies. That is why species matters. Size matters. Frequency matters. And the brand's willingness to test or talk openly about it matters too. This is especially important for pregnant women, children, and anyone who eats tuna often enough that it becomes a weekly habit. The danger in food is rarely one dramatic moment. It is repetition. It is the assumption that because something is sold everywhere, it must be fine in any amount. That is the trap. Tuna can absolutely fit in a healthy diet, but not all tuna deserves equal trust, and not every can should be treated like an everyday food. Then there's the texture trick. People often judge tuna by how it looks before they drain it. That is exactly why added liquid matters. A plump can be a false friend. The product looks generous until the sink tells the truth. This is one of the easiest ways brands create the feeling of value without delivering the substance of it. Once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. A can should not need theater. Then there is oil. Good olive oil can be wonderful with tuna. Cheap vegetable oil can make a weak product seem smoother than it is. That is the important difference. Not all oil-packed tuna is bad. But you should ask whether the oil is enhancing good fish or disguising average fish. One is a choice, the other is a strategy. And then we get to the labels people want to trust most. Sustainable, responsible, dolphin safe, wild caught. These words matter. But they have become so powerful in marketing that they sometimes work even when the full supply chain story is messy or incomplete. That does not mean every brand using them is lying. It means you should never let those words do all the thinking for you. The cleaner the claim, the more I want proof. So if you're standing in front of the shelf tomorrow, here is the easiest way to make a smarter call. First, decide what you actually want. If you want the lowest risk routine can, lean toward brands known for mercury awareness. If you want better taste, pay for a brand that lets the fish stay whole, moist, and minimally handled. If you want values like traceability and cleaner catch methods, choose a brand that treats those details like core information, not decoration. Second, read the ingredient list like it owes you money. Because in a way it does. If you see fish, water, salt, and maybe olive oil, that is a cleaner start. Fewer ingredients do not guarantee greatness, but they remove a lot of places for nonsense to hide. Third, think about frequency, not just price. A cheap can that ends up in your lunch 3 times a week is not the same as an occasional convenience food. The more often you eat it, the more the quality questions matter. A slightly pricier can that you actually trust may be the better value in real life. Fourth, notice whether the brand is confident enough to talk specifics. Does it mention the catch method clearly? Does it explain the packing? Does it discuss testing? Does it act like an open book, or like it hopes you will just see the word protein and move on? Evasive brands do not usually earn openness by accident. And finally, trust your mouth. People ignore this, but taste is often data. If a tuna can is metallic, overly salty, suspiciously mushy, or weirdly dry, your body is already telling you the product is not as good as the label promised. Marketing talks, texture confesses. One more thing before we close. This video is not about fear, it is about standards. I do not think everyone needs to panic over every can of tuna they have ever eaten. But I do think too many people hand their trust to food companies, and once you realize how often the cheapest can is padded, how often the clean-looking can is oversold, you stop shopping on autopilot, you start asking better questions. Is this really tuna or tuna plus theater? Is this a fair price or a cheap illusion? Is this a healthy shortcut or a compromise I have repeated so often it feels normal? Those questions matter because food does not just feed you. It teaches you what you are willing to accept. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. The best canned tuna usually has less to hide. Less liquid, less filler, less marketing drama, less need to distract you from what is actually inside. The worst cans do the opposite. They ask you to trust the label more than the food. So the next time you reach for a can, do not just ask what it costs. Ask what it is costing you to believe. And if a brand wants your money while keeping the important details blurry, leave it on the shelf. Because the smartest shopper is not the one who finds the cheapest tuna. It is the one who knows when a bargain is fake. If this video saved you from one bad can, do one last thing. Like it, subscribe for more honest food breakdowns, and share it with that friend who thinks all tuna tastes the same. One can might be lunch, but one smart choice repeated over time, that can change everything.